Very good day to everyone for joining in, and welcome to the second AMA/workshop for Build a Web App for Millions of Users by PI Network. I am Rico, event specialist at HackerEarth, and with me we have Christian, Swaroop, Aurelian, and Stephanie from PI Network. So thank you panelists for joining in, and let's go ahead with the workshop. Over to you.
Great, thank you, Rico. So to everyone who was at the last workshop, thank you for coming back. And to everyone who's new, it's great to have you here. I want to introduce my colleagues, Christian and Aurelian, who will be giving the presentation today. So Christian and Aurelian, I'll let you take it from here.
All right, hello everyone. Today we're going to go over a few things with the goal to have some Q&A at the end. And so we're going to start with how to develop on Pi, take a look at what currently is capable with the Pi SDK, and then we're going to look at it from, we're going to see what the user flow looks like, and then you'll learn about payments from the developer standpoint, and then we'll cover a few topics at the end like Pi OS, and then resources that you developers can lean on during the hackathon to get questions answered or to help troubleshoot issues. So first up, how to develop on Pi. We have two main functionalities that we provide. We have the authentication functionality, which is connecting with a Pi user. And this functionality allows you, the developer, to obtain limited information that we make available on the user. This includes username and a unique identifier, which allows your application to keep track of the user. And this is known as an access token. And this access token will allow you to forego having a login or a sign up, and will help you create accounts for users in the long run. And then with the Pi browser, when you're utilizing Pi browser, this access token is accessible within the Pi browser. And then we also have payments. So prior to the hackathon, we had app to user payments, and now we also have, we had user to app payments, and now we also have app to user payments out as well. And both of the payment flows do require user permissions, with the user having to participate in the user to app payment flow. And for the app to user payments, as I said, we just rolled this out and is currently available on testnet. And so we'll be sharing the links for the documentation on that at the end. For the authentication flow, we're going to run through the user flow. And this is how a user will interact with it and what they'll see on the front end. And so Pi authentication, which is the first step, this is that sign-in functionality that I was talking about. A user can hit the sign-in button on the demo app, and then you'll see the username appears on the right-hand image. That username is coming from the access token that I mentioned, and the limited information that we do supply, username is one of those. And so you can personalize the user experience with that. And you can also utilize that access token to verify a user. And so there is a verification API that we provide where you can pass that access token to ensure that it is a real Pi user. So on the demo app, in order to process payments in any form, you have to authenticate the user. And so here, the user is now signed in. So now that the user is signed in, we can process a payment. And for demonstration's sake, we are only going to show the flow for user to app payments. And So for user to application payments, I'm looking at the demo app here on the right, and I'd like to buy an apple pie. So when I'm in the Pi browser, I'm signed in, I just hit order. And so once I hit order, then it brings me to the next screen. And on this screen, the user is not quite sure what's going on. However, the developer and the Pi platform, the Pi servers on the back end, are communicating to create the payment. And so once the payment has been created, then the Pi wallet opens up. And in the Pi wallet will open over top of your application. That is how it is intended. And this allows Pi platform to protect user information at this point. And so on this initial payment screen, I see all of the payment details. I clicked on Apple Pie, so I see my memo is I'm ordering an apple pie, and then I'm also able to verify that it's going to be 3 test pie. Test pie is the free pie that is on Pi testnet. You can get it through a faucet, which is in the Pi wallet. So you don't need to worry about running out of test pie. You can always keep refilling. And so I agree with this payment. I hit pay with test Pi. I could also cancel it, which will exit out of the payment flow. But I agree, so I hit pay with test Pi. And once I agree, I need to now acknowledge my agreement. And with the blockchain, the way to acknowledge my agreement with a transaction is to apply my passphrase to it. A passphrase is a long string of words that corresponds to a large number, which only I know. And so with that passphrase, I'm able to tell the blockchain, I agree, and this is cryptographically secure and verifiable. And because of the way the payment flow is designed, the application is not able to access the user's passphrase. At the same time, Pi is not able to access it either. So this is a non-custodial payment method. So I enter my passphrase, and I can do it either using Face ID or biometrics if it's supported by the device, or I can just copy and paste it into the passphrase field, and then I hit pay with test Pi. Once the user confirms the payment with their passphrase, then it brings them to another loading screen. And once again, the developer and the Pi platform, the Pi servers on the back end, are communicating to confirm the payment. At this stage, the payment has been sent to the blockchain, and the developer is confirming that payment with the Pi platform. And then once everything is confirmed, then the final confirmation screen will appear. This is all the payment details, and it'll tell you the status of the payment here. The payment succeeded, and you can see what wallet address it was sent to, and then also what it was for. And that is the user flow. And now I'm going to let Aurelian take it away with the developer flow.
Hey, yep, thanks for going through these, Christian. And yeah, as mentioned, I'm going to essentially go through the flow that Christian just explained, or that he just went through, but I'm going to look at it more from the point of view of the developer who is integrating this payment flow into their app. And the idea of this flow and the reason there's a little bit of the reason there are several steps here that where the user needs to interact are because the whole point of payments is to make sure that all of the parties that are involved are in agreement about what happened. And the idea is to get confirmation from all parties involved that they have the same view of the fact that this payment has been made, or possibly that it has not happened and that it needs to be considered discarded. So on the, yeah, you can move to the next slide, please. So as Christian mentioned, and just a reminder, there are 3 steps to the payment. There's creating, which is on the part of the developer. There's approving, which is on the part of the user. And then there's completing, which is on the part of the developer. And on the next slide, we have a diagram with all of the parties involved. The app frontend, which is what the end user interacts with. The app backend. The little person icon there is the end user, and the little blockchain icon, the icon to the right is the blockchain, and then the Pi platform on the far right is the Pi servers and the platform that centralizes some of this data in order to provide a unified user experience. And so so we are going to go through how the flow looks like in terms of data flowing between all of these parties. So on the next slide, this is the create payment step, where the app frontend uses a method on the Pi SDK, which is a JavaScript library that can be integrated into an app. And calls a method to request for the payment to be created. And this call goes first to the Pi platform, which is again orchestrating the whole flow. And the Pi platform on the next slide responds with a payment ID, which the developer will then be able to use for all the subsequent steps. That payment ID as a developer is your unique identifier that you will use to reference this payment on all subsequent steps. And this is also the ID that you need to use in order to check whether the user has actually paid and check the status, and possibly cancel the payment if it turns out that that this payment hasn't really happened. So this is pretty important to save reliably. So the recommendation here is to send it to your backend. And in order to kind of prove that your backend has received it, you need to confirm acknowledgement of this payment ID with the Pi platform using an endpoint that is called approving. So this is server-side approval that's shown here with this payment ID going to the Pi platform. And on the next step, the user will enter their passphrase to sign the transaction and submit it to the blockchain. As Christian mentioned, this is the user approval step, where the wallet opens as a pop-up on top of the app, and this is out of your control as a developer. And this is where the payment is completed, submitted to the blockchain, and then the Pi platform is made aware of this payment. And that is something that you do not need to care about as a developer. And then the Pi platform will return to your app's frontend through the Pi SDK a transaction ID. And this transaction ID is the unique verifiable proof on the decentralized blockchain that the payment has been made by the user. So it is also strongly recommended that you save it in your backend and in your database as a developer, because it is the proof that the payment has actually happened. And in order to prove that you have received it, you are required as a developer to call another endpoint or another flow, which is called server-side completion, which needs to receive the transaction ID as well as the payment ID to prove that you are aware of the link between the two, and so that your backend can verify that it has received both and stored both together. Now, in more technical terms, on the next slides, the exact same steps are shown, except they are shown in terms of method names or endpoints on the Pi platform API instead of being worded in English. So step one is an SDK method that is called create payment. Step two, the payment ID being returned to your app's front end is done through a callback, which is called onReady for server approval. Then the server-side approval flow is done through an API endpoint called /approve using the payment ID, as mentioned. And then the transaction ID gets returned back to your app front end through a JavaScript callback server completion, which gets past the transaction ID, which then can be sent for server-side completion to the Pi platform using an endpoint that is called complete, which receives the payment ID and takes the transaction ID as a parameter. So do you want to take the floor back for this next slide, Christian? Or
Sure.
Okay. All right. So yeah. So that is the that flow that we just mentioned was the user to app payment flow. This is the most basic payment for most apps, given that most apps integrating with Pi will most likely be collecting payments from users in order to build whatever transaction layer you want to build integrating with Pi. But on the other hand, there's probably a lot of business models for your apps that are going to need the other direction, which is what we call app to user payments. And so yeah, that is where Christian will be taking the floor back and presenting the high level of app to user payments, which are a little bit different, even though very similar. All right, and that's where I will let you take things on.
So for app to user payments, as Aurelian mentioned, the flow is similar. However, it is a bit different, and it does require backend SDK integration. And so we have a slightly different set of documentation to help support app to user payments. And don't worry about trying to figure out where any of these things are. We will have the links for you later. And we'll have the links for all the different documentations and for the guides and all of that. So when you're creating app to user payments from a very high level, you need to build the transaction and send that transaction to Pi. And then it'll be passed to the blockchain. And to do this, you need to integrate, as I said, the backend SDK, which can be done, which currently we have from the core team documentation for doing it in Ruby or doing it in Node.js. Some of our great community members have gotten together and are creating an open source SDK to do it in Python, in which they converted the Ruby SDK over. But don't worry if you don't see a language or a framework that you use in that list. You can still integrate these payments. And so the team went ahead and created what's called the integration guide. And this guide gives a lot of the detail about how the transactions are built. And this is to give you the information that you need so that you can create your own SDK. And you can create it in the language that is compatible with your application or that you're comfortable with. It's up to you. And so app to user payments can be integrated into any application. You might have to build the functionality yourself. And with app to user payments, there is the requirement for what is known as a developer wallet. And a developer wallet is a wallet that is separate of a personal Pi wallet. And here, for your Pi wallet, when you log into the Pi browser, which is the screenshot on the far left, there's the wallet.pi button. That is where you would go to access your wallet. You put your passphrase in, and then it brings you into the wallet. But for a developer wallet, you instead have to create the developer wallet within the developer portal. And so to access the developer portal, this was the same place that you created the application to gain access to the API key and the app checklist. And so you're going to go into develop.pi, and then you're going to head to the app checklist. And on the app checklist, it is step 3. And you're going to click on step 3, and it's going to bring you to the middle screen. And then here you'll be able to create a wallet. If you've created a wallet in the past for this application, when you log in the middle of the screen where it says connected wallet, and then it says none. If you've done it before, you'll be able to click the drop-down arrow, and all the wallet addresses that you've created in the past will appear there. So for this app, I have not created a wallet, so I'll click generate new. And so generate new will then bring me into the next screen, which is the screen on the right. And here is where it'll give me the wallet address, which is the public key. That is the address that you can share with anyone. That's the address that they can use to send you Pi. And at the bottom in red, the secret seed. This is similar to a passphrase. However, it is not in the passphrase is words. The secret seed is going to look very similar to a wallet address. However, the secret seed functions the same as a passphrase. If you have the secret seed, you have full access and control to that wallet. If you give this out, that wallet is compromised, and the funds can be sent out using the secret seed. So it's important to store this just like you would a passphrase. Make sure it's safe. Do not hard code this into your front end or in any environment where it could be compromised. So once you create the new wallet address and seed, you're going to hit copy. You're going to want to store that information somewhere safe. And then once you've done that, you'll hit the back button, which will bring you back to the middle screen. And at that point in time, you'll be able to apply that newly created wallet address to the application. So you'll hit the drop down, you'll select the wallet address, and then the connect button will become live, and you can connect that wallet to the application. And with the reason why this is important with app to user payments is app to user payments requires a secret seed instead of a passphrase. And so having the secret seed here will help you to create app to user payments. Next up, I would like to talk about PiOS. So PiOS is Pi's open source license, so Pi open source. It is our unique open software license. It allows anyone or any developer to use this license, which when applied to your software, your application, will grant rights for another developer within the Pi ecosystem to utilize that application or that piece of software or that or the functionality. And so this is a great way to help other developers out and creating, SDKs, guides. Like I said earlier, we had a group who converted the Ruby SDK into Python. And so doing anything like that, we want to acknowledge you and give you a chance to be displayed. And so we have a featured listing for all PiOS applications or libraries, and that happens on our repository on GitHub for PiOS. So the same repository that hosts the license there also has a list, and it has a list of all the applications that are currently supporting it. And you can, and as a lot of you know, you can earn Pi for participating in this hackathon. You can earn additional Pi and be rewarded with additional Pi if you create and apply this PiOS license to your application. And so if you, at the end of the hackathon, create an application, you apply the PiOS license, and follow the proper steps that are laid out on the Hacker site, we will then reward you with just over 90 Pi. And so how do you use the license? So you're going to visit our GitHub. As I said, the repository is there. And so all the instructions to participate and you utilize the license are on the GitHub. And that's also where the list is. So the instructions will also tell you how to apply to join the application list or the library list for display. And so once you submit it, then one of the members from the core team will take over and will help guide you through the process and getting you set up. And lastly, as I said, we've got all the links here for you. We will be sharing this presentation, so you'll be able to get access to the links. There's no need to copy everything down. I'll also drop them in the chat during Q&A. That way everyone has them. And so that is it for the presentation. We wanted to open the floor up to questions. That way we can help answer as many questions related to development or troubleshooting or errors that people are currently experiencing on this call. And I believe Rico or Mandar, I think we collected questions ahead of time if we want to start with those.
Thank you, Christian, for the wonderful presentation. So we do have a lot of questions in the Q&A section. Do you want to take those up? So we'll be starting off with the Q&A. So we have another question from Colleen. Colleen says, I'm Colleen from Pi Voice app. Our technical team wants to ask, when will Pi browser be able to access microphone as a social communication app, and the user wants to send voice messages?
Yeah, so that's a great question and something we're looking at for future development. We don't have a timeline as to when that might be possible, but we'll keep everyone updated as improvements and additional features are added to the Pi browser.
And I'll also add that for the purpose of this hackathon, if your product relies on this feature, then you might want to rethink the product and what you want to prioritize for the hackathon, because we do not know the timeline for this feature, but it is very likely not going to be in the next month.
All right, so the next question is, should we make a payment app?
You should make whatever kind of application you would prefer or would like, or you find exciting, or you think would be beneficial to the hackathon and to the ecosystem as a whole. You shouldn't feel the need to build any one type of application. Yeah, anything that is unique, thoughtful, solves a problem for users or helps them complete a task better, or they might find enjoyable. There's many different reasons to build different applications, but you don't need to build a payment app. I'm not saying you shouldn't. I'm just saying that's not the only thing you can build.
All right, so the next question is, do we have to host our application along with a domain? And what if we don't have our own hosting and domain?
We've gotten a couple questions like this in the past. And if you don't have a domain, there's a few free domain services out there. I would recommend using one of those free domain services, at least for the hackathon. That way you can get your application launched on the Pi browser. Without a domain, you won't be able to verify the application, and therefore you won't be able to launch the application in the Pi browser. So use a free domain, and then after the hackathon, if you continue developing, then you would want to get a paid for domain that offers either better service or more security, whatever it might be.
All right. So the next one is it safe to share my app wallet seed phrase with my developer? Would my developer need my app wallet seed phrase while building my Pi project?
Great question. I'm going to answer these in reverse order. Would my developer need my app wallet seed phrase while building my Pi project? Your application will need your seed phrase to build a payment. And so you cannot create an app to use your payment without it. Now, you could theoretically not share your seed phrase with your developer, but that would limit the developer being able to test the payment functionality. And so what you could do is you could give your developer, you could generate a developer seed phrase, a developer wallet with the seed phrase, and you could give that seed phrase to the developer. He or she can then create the application and could test the application. And then after that is done, you could change, you could create a new developer wallet, and you could change the seed phrase after all of those testing rounds have been completed. But if the developer still has access to the code, that doesn't matter. So to really answer your question, is it safe? That's up to you. It's, do you trust your developer? Do you trust your developer to not use that seed phrase for taking the Pi that's in the wallet? Do you trust that they won't post it, where they shouldn't? Do you trust that they won't put it in the front end or make it accessible where people could potentially access it? And so you need to do your research and determine for yourself, what's the best situation for you.
Right, and there's something I want to add to this answer, which is that there are two kinds of apps that we intentionally separated them on the developer portal to avoid any risk of confusion between details, production secrets such as the API key and the seed phrase for the app wallet. And those two types of apps are testnet and mainnet apps. And there is no such thing as there is no sharing of any production secrets between testnet apps and mainnet apps, and that is intentional. So another thing that you can do is for all of these production secrets, your developer is hopefully building the app in testnet first, and you can test with test_pi. And test_pi is essentially worthless, right? test_pi can be obtained for free. You can obtain it, you can refill a testnet you can refill a testnet wallet from the wallet UI and get 100 test_pi each time. So the developer having access to the secret seed of your testnet app wallet, it is not a risk, even if you suspect that this developer might try to do some shady stuff with the secret seed afterwards. Now, for the mainnet app, as Christian said, it depends on how you trust the developer and what type of contract you have with them. But if you do not want your developer to have access to your mainnet app seed phrase wallet, to your mainnet app wallet seed phrase, then what you can do is ask them to treat it as a production secret and make it configurable. And then when you are setting up the production app, which is going to interact with the Pi mainnet, you are the one setting up the mainnet app wallet seed phrase. This is also the intended way for this to be used. And what's for sure is that the API key and the wallet seed phrase should never, ever be hard-coded into the app's code. They should be made configurable. And then the way to inject the configuration is out of scope of this workshop. But there are plenty of ways to deal with production secrets. You can use secret managers, you can use environment variables, but you should never store them in a Git repository, for example. You should enable the app to receive it and then configure it specifically in your production environment and make sure that it is protected. I think that's all I have to add on this question.
All right. Thanks, Aurelian. Thanks, Christian. So the next question is, I use Flask framework to develop my backends. Can I still develop my Pi apps? Does Pi have any problem? Hold on.
Yeah, so
Does Pi have any Python modules?
So for the first kind of payments that we showed during the workshop, the user to app payments, so the payments that are originating from the user to your app, you do not need any specific libraries, and you can use pretty much any language out there or any framework, because all you need is JavaScript on the front end side, but that is pretty standard since Pi apps are essentially web apps with Pi SDK integrated into them. And on the back end, all you need to do is be able to make API calls. So that can be done from pretty much any language. And Python here, you can use Python here as well as pretty much anything else. Now for app to user payments, so payments going from your app to your users, you need a backend SDK. One of the backend SDKs that exist for integrating Pi. There are 3 right now, and one of them is Python. So you can use that one. However, I think that it is not fully complete and fully production ready. And it is actually looking for maintainers and contributors to help make it production ready, if I am not mistaken. So you can check out the repository link in the slides. But you will be able to use it for if you need to build app to user payments into your app. And you can contribute to the open source repository if there's anything that's not fully complete and needs some help.
All right. Currently, Pi Hackathon only accepts web app. Can I build a mobile application connected to Pi network?
So kind of going back to the answer that Aurelian just gave about the Python, where he mentioned that you need to plug the SDK into the front end for JavaScript or in JavaScript. So creating a web app is all that's needed, because you're going to be showing the application in the Pi browser, and it needs that SDK functionality. So it is a web app and not a mobile app that's needed for this hackathon.
Yeah, and Christian, to simply put, is it fair to say that if somebody does not create a mobile web app, but instead creates a native phone app, then they won't be able to integrate with our SDK, right?
Correct. A native phone app will not display within the Pi browser.
Right. So people, one of the essential things to do for your app is to be able to integrate with our SDK, both the user authentication and the payment functionalities, as Christian and Aurelian walked you guys through. So if you don't build a web app, then you won't be able to integrate with that. So it is essential for the purpose of the hackathon to build a mobile web app and not a native mobile app.
All right, so the next one is, can it be made into a multi-language version? Because at present, there are many people who can't understand English.
What does it refer to in this context? If it refers to the presentation slides or this type of content, unfortunately, we aren't going to be able to translate all of that content. However, for the documentation, I think there are developer communities out there that can help with understanding the documentation, even though it is written in English. However, the reference version, I think, will always be written in English, because this is it's a valid debate whether it's a good thing or not, but English is pretty much the de facto standard for all things computer science. So there's a good chance that the reference documentation is always written in English, and that it is the reference version that you need to go back to if you have a doubt.
Will there be SDK for C# or .NET in the future?
Yeah, so potentially, as we mentioned, if you would like to create the C# SDK for app-to-user payments, you're more than, we encourage it and would love a contribution on the PiOS for that. In terms of the front-end SDK, though, I don't know if we will have a C# front-end SDK in the near future.
All right. So yeah, speaking of front end, the next question is, does the SDK still require a front end like a GUI, or does it go directly into the Pi wallet page?
So this is a little tough to answer, in the sense that if you don't have a graphical user interface, how is a user supposed to interact with the web app or with the application? So I think you would need a graphical user interface in order for the user to interact with the application, and then be able to signal their desire to make a payment.
All right. So the next question is, can I join another team? I'll take that up. So as long as the idea submission phase is not over, and if you're currently part of a team, yes, you can leave the team and join another team. But yeah, once the idea submission phase is over, you cannot join another team. So if you want to switch teams, now's the time to do it. The next one is, will Pi create two types of wallet, one for storage and the other one for transaction?
So this already exists. Or go ahead, Aurelian.
Yeah, you can go ahead.
Yeah, so I was going to say that this already exists in the sense that if you would like to create multiple testnet wallets, you are able to do that. You could create a developer wallet, and you could create a wallet with personal wallet within the Pi wallet, and you could apply the developer wallet to your application, and you could send the Pi into the other wallet. And so there's, you know, a few different ways you could structure this to make the functionality already exist. Now, in terms of mainnet wallets, we will be, releasing we'll be releasing developer wallets for the mainnet in the future, and developers will be able to create a similar setup on the mainnet, potentially in the future.
All right. So the next question kind of looks like a pseudo code. If you can, open the Q&A section, Christian or Aurelian, anyone. Hard to read it out because it looks more like a pseudo code. This is the first question in the Q&A.
Right. What this line with a few arrows is explaining is the fact that the seed phrase or the passphrase that we're using in the wallet for user wallets can be used to generate secret seeds, which is what is used to sign transactions on the blockchain. And the idea behind app wallets is that we want to make it a little bit easier to manage. And to make this easier to manage on the developer's part, we are directly generated a secret seed instead of going through the passphrase, which is then used to generate the secret seed. And then that secret seed is used by the app to sign transactions when the app needs to make transactions on the blockchain. And that's a lot of words to say that app wallets and secret seed for app wallets is exactly as secure as the passphrase with 24 words that you are using to unlock your personal wallet. It is just kind of a different way to manage a wallet, but it is exactly as secure, and you can just treat it as a classic wallet, except it is made for programmatic use by an app instead of being made for being used by an end user on the Pi wallet UI. I hope that answers the question. And then I guess the more detailed answer would be kind of out of scope of this workshop, because the whole point of the platform and the whole point of what we're doing with Pi is to try and abstract away all the cryptographic details from the blockchain and turn it into an integration where you only need to use standard SDKs and libraries and API calls, which is what a lot of developers know how to make. So yeah, I guess this question, there could be a whole 1 hour conversation on the detailed answer, but this is definitely out of scope for this workshop. For the next question, Swaroop, I
think you're answering it. I mean, I think the gist of the question is, can you provide me some tips for winning this hackathon?
Tips for winning the hackathon. Wow, that is a big question, isn't it? So here's what we will recommend. So I think if we stick to the fundamentals, to the basics, and do them right, and stay focused in getting those right, then I think that is the recipe for success. So we held another workshop before this one. That one was about how to design a product, how to think about user research and user need. And then this workshop is about how to integrate with the Pi SDK. So if you guys review our blog post, watch the videos, and make sure you understand what we're talking about, and then follow the guidelines, then I think that is the best way to set yourself up for success. On the other hand, if you have lots of ideas in mind and you're trying to do too many things for too many user needs, all in the same app, then I think that will not serve you well. So that would be my frank advice.
All right, the next one is, in which OS can we use our SDK? Will it be Windows or can it be Ubuntu as well?
The SDK is OS agnostic. It matters more about the language, and so it's in JavaScript. If you need to be able to utilize JavaScript within your program and your front end to be able to call the SDK. So you will be able to use it on Windows or Ubuntu.
Should we make a password generator?
You should make whatever application you feel is going to be most impactful for the user and is something that you as a team can execute well.
What's the maximum number of wallets that can be processed at a time by Pi app?
I'm not sure what processed means in this context, but one interpretation is what's the maximum number of wallets that a Pi app can have, and the answer is as many as you want for a testnet. You can regenerate new app wallets if you somehow forgot the secret seed, for example. And for mainnet, your app can only have one mainnet app wallet for now. There could be ways in the future to regenerate it if you lost the passphrase, but I hope that will not happen to you, because it would definitely be a little bit cumbersome. And then in terms of processing payments from users, there is no limitation. If your app is having a large number of users, we don't have a limitation on how many payments you can process from all of these users.
All right. And I'll take up the next question. Question is there any way to contact people who want to join your team on HackerEarth to get more information from them before admitting them into your team? So I'll take that up. So basically, when someone sends you a request to join your team, or if someone joins your team directly, what you can do is you can go to their profile and you can see their skill sets, like what they are good at, whether they're good at Java, whether they're good at Python, what are their specific skill sets. And of course, that depends on how they have customized their profile. If they have added the required skill sets in their profile, then you can be able to view it. And if you think that the candidate is a good match, then yeah, you can admit them to your team. I hope that answers your question. Are there any specific timing constraints during processing a Pi transaction?
Yes, there are. In the initial payment setup, the loading screen, when the user first clicked order an apple pie, the window popped up with the loading screen, and at that stage, the developer is creating the payment in tandem with the Pi servers. And the developer has 60 seconds in order to get that payment ID and then pass it to their backend and complete it, send it to the to the approve endpoint of the API. And then after the user puts their passphrase in and acknowledges the payment, then the developer must once again complete another action. And at this stage, another loading window appears in front of the user. And once again, the developer has 60 seconds at this time to get the payment ID and transaction ID and pass that information from the front end to the back end, and then complete the payment via the proper API endpoint, utilizing that information. So you have 60 seconds at each step.
All right. So the next question by Danish Ali is, what's the difference between business and ecosystem application, and what is required to be helped by code developers?
So a business application is an application that has a, for lack of a better word, business model, revenue generation, or has a way to earn revenue. And so an ecosystem app, however, does not have a clear business model. ecosystem applications in a blockchain are things like the block explorer. And so a block explorer has no business model. It doesn't sell information because the information is publicly available. And so that's the difference between business and ecosystem app. Now, what is required to get help by core developers? I'm not sure what help you're asking for, but the best place to get help is on the Discord server, the Pi ecosystem Discord server. And so to get access to that, head into Brainstorm. There is a link that you'll be able to generate in Brainstorm to be able to join that server. Once you're there, there is core team members in that server. There are also other developers, and many of those other developers can help you troubleshoot and can help you understand, and then core team members will also jump in and help as well if there's issues that need answered.
And I'll quickly add to what Christian just said. One way to think about an ecosystem app is it's a public good. So, for example, if you open a shop on a street and you sell stuff, then you make money. But if you build a road in a village, then you may not have a way to make money from that road. But it is still useful to the village. So, but you don't have a way to capture revenue in that model. So if you build a common good, an example could be a block explorer. We already have a block explorer, but that's just an example. So if you build a product that is helpful to the Pi community, but there is no clear way that you can make Pi from that app, then we can look into potentially helping you build that product. So, so if you have any such idea in mind, as Christian said, let us know on Discord server, consult with us, and we can provide you additional guidance.
All right. So now we are almost out of time. Actually, we are over our time, and we do have 30 open questions. So do you guys want to take that up, or do you want to call it in?
How about this? We could continue answering some of these questions on Discord. So people can join us there, and to the extent we can post written responses to these questions.
All right.
Yeah, and for anyone who has not been able to join our Discord server yet, there are instructions for how to do so on the Resource Center. And I think it was mentioned recently, but in case anyone missed it, you get the link through the Pi Brainstorm app. And following this meeting, I can send out an email to all the registered participants with instructions on how to join Brainstorm, or how to join Discord.
So, all right. You can ask your questions in Discord, and I thank you all for coming in. Thank you, Aurelian, Christian, Stephanie, and Swaroop for conducting this session and answering all those questions. I think this time we had kind of thrice the number of questions we had last time. I mean, way more than thrice actually. So thank you all for being so patient and answering all those questions kindly.
Yeah, thank you, Rico. And to all the participants, thank you for your thoughtful questions and engagement.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for coming in.
Thanks, everyone.
Have a nice day. Bye-bye.
Happy building.
Thanks a lot. Have a nice day.
Thank you. Bye.